everyone, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Charlene, and today I'm going to be talking about the 40 books I want to read by the time I'm 40. So I've been seeing a lot of these videos going around of 30 by 30, 40 by 40, and 50 by 50. And even though I don't have a lot of time to get through all of these books, I still kind of wanted to jump on the bandwagon. So here we are. I am turning 38 this year, so I do only have 2 years to get through the 40 books that I'm going to be talking about today. But I wanted to make this video before I had even less time to get to these books, so we're just going to go ahead and do that. And since there are 40 books to talk about, let's go ahead and get started because I tend to be long-winded. And I'd rather not have to change the battery in the middle again. So for some of the books on the list, I have very specific books in mind. Some of them I have more of a specific author and I just want to get to one of their books. And that's going to be the case for the first couple of authors. The first one is Charles Dickens. The only book that I have read by him so far is A Christmas Carol, which is of course one of his shortest works. Now, I do own 2 of his other books. I have both Great Expectations, and if I cannot drop books, I also have David Copperfield. Obviously, I've read neither of these. So I would like to get to at least one of these next year, or in the next 2 years. The next one, I also own a few books by this author and have not read any of them, and that is Bernard Cornwell, who generally writes historical fiction. I have the first book in the Last Kingdom series or the Saxon series. I don't know what the actual title is. I feel like there's 2 or 3 different titles to this series. But this one takes place during the time of the Saxons, but I'm hoping to get an actual date. Northumbria, well, the prologue begins in Northumbria, AD 866 to 867. So late in the first millennium in the British Isles. I don't know much more than that, but it is about a 12-13 book series, but all the books are between 300 and 400 pages for the most part. So not too terrible as far as length goes compared to some other series I'm in the middle of. However, I have 2 standalones by him as well. The first one is Fools and Mortals, which follows the younger brother of William Shakespeare. And then I have The Fort, which is a novel of the Revolutionary War. And I think, if I remember correctly, this at least follows the British perspective of the Revolutionary War, but I think it actually covers both sides. As you can probably guess, I've not read anything from the British side of the Revolutionary War, so I think this could be a really interesting perspective. But, again, kind of like Charles Dickens, as long as I get to at least one of these in the next couple of years, I will be happy. The next 3 books are all part of the same series, but I do want to get this series completed because there's really no reason why I haven't yet. That is the Book of Ember series by Jean Duprow. The first book is called The Book of Ember, and I've actually read that one twice now. I didn't care for it the first time I read it. The second time I read it, I loved it. But I need to get to the other 3 books. So the second book is The People of Sparks. The third is The Prophet of Yonwood. And the fourth is The Diamond of Darkhold. I will be doing a book haul in January at some point, but I did buy the last 2 books earlier this year. So now I have the whole series. I just need to read them. The next 2 books are also part of the same series. Honestly, as big as these books are, I will be happy if I get 1 book read a year over the next 2 years. And that is the Wheel of Time series. So I have book 4, which is The Shadow Rising, and I have book 5, which is The Fires of Heaven. Both of these are chunky books. The 4th book I know is 917 because I recently looked that up. The 5th book is 808 pages. As much as I would like to push through and get through 2 or 3 of these a year, I will be content if I get through just 1 a year. The next one is a classic I've been interested in for a while. I bought it. I still haven't picked it up. And that is Vanity Fair by William Makepeace Thackeray. I do know Tiffany from Beautiful Minutia did not care for this book, but I still really want to read it and just see what I think of it. So just going off of the back, this is a satire of upper middle class London life that asks the reader, which of us is happy in this world? Which of us has his desire? Or having it is satisfied. It's one that I've wanted to get to for a while and I just haven't. And honestly, that's kind of a theme with a lot of the books on here is I've been wanting to get to these and I keep putting them off. So I'm kind of giving myself a deadline. So that's why it's on here. The next one is part of a series, and I really just need to read the next book, which, yes, if you saw my goals for 2025, I'm already hoping to get to it next year, but I still put it on this list anyway. And that is Deviation by Amy Alwarden, which is the second book in the Raven vs. Crow series. I'm guessing there's only going to be 3 books, but I know there's going to be at least 3. And this is an adult fantasy series. It follows an older protagonist. I loved the first book. I need to just read the second one. The next one is also part of a series that I need to get caught up on, and that is The Olympian Affair by Jim Butcher, which is the second book in the Cinder Spires series. I reread the first book in 2024. I still haven't gotten to this book, so I need to in the next couple of years. Another series I need to complete is The Night Trilogy by Elie Wiesel, and I only need to read Day, which is less than 200 pages, because all of the books are at least Night and Dawn, so I assume Day, were a little over 100 pages each. So they're not very long books. I just need to finally finish it. The next one is also a chunky book, which is probably part of the reason I haven't picked it up, but I really enjoyed the first book. I just need to continue/finish the series. But that is European Travels for the Monstrous Gentlewoman by Theodora Goss. This is the second book in the equally lengthy series title, The Extraordinary Adventures of the Athena Club. The first book is The Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter. Really enjoyed it. Really good book. Love the characters in it. We have characters from a lot of different Victorian era stories. It takes place in Victorian times. And I really enjoyed the first book, so I just need to continue the series. But this book is 706 pages. So it is a little bit of a chunker. The next one is not a chunker. I just need to finally get to it, and that is Pure-Elandra by C.S. Lewis, which is the second book in the Space Trilogy. Yes, there are some books on here that you probably saw in my 2025 goals video. They're on there for a reason, because I've been putting them off. They're also on this list because I've been putting them off. I read the first book in the series probably 2 or 3 years ago. Really enjoyed it. I finally bought this book, I think last year, in 2023, and I still haven't gotten to it. So, it's going on the list. The next one is yet another series that I need to finish, and that is The Themis Files by Sylvain Novelle. And the third book is Only Human, which unfortunately I haven't heard the greatest reviews on, which is probably part of the reason I've put it off. But I would like to finally have the series done. Okay, the next 2 on this list are oddly rereads, not first-time reads. But I will explain. So the 2 that I need to get to are The Two Towers and Return of the King by J.R.R. Tolkien. Now, I reread Fellowship of the Ring in either 2021 or 2022. I think it was 2022, but I don't remember for sure now. And I was in the middle of rereading a couple other series at the same time. So I decided to put a pause on Lord of the Rings, finish out the other 2 series, which I was hoping to do in a few months. One of them took a bit longer than that, but I did eventually get it finished, but then never came back and reread The Two Towers and Return of the King. So I want to get back to this and finish rereading them sometime over the next couple of years. The next one will continue a series I started but haven't read any more books in, and that is N or M by Agatha Christie. This is the second book in the Tommy and Tuppence series. I read The Secret Adversary, the first book, earlier in 2024, and I absolutely loved it. But I have not yet continued the series. So at some point in the next couple of years, I do want to continue the series. I'm hoping to read more than just N or M, but I at least want to get that one read. The next one is kind of in the same vein, and that is The Mystery of the Jeweled Moth by Catherine Woodfine, which is the second book in the Sinclair's Mystery series. This is a middle grade mystery series, and I really enjoyed the first book. However, I have to borrow them from my library because I don't own them, so I just haven't made it a priority to check that book out. I would like to at least read the second book over the next couple of years. Possibly more, but at least one. The next one that I do want to get to, I'm definitely hoping to read more than this, but I'm at least going to list the one book, and that is Oathbringer by Brandon Sanderson. This is the third book in the Stormlight Archives series, and honestly, I would like to read at least one a year in this series, but I'm at least going to list Oathbringer. it's one of those things where I could list only books where I'm like, I'm not planning to get to more than this in the next 2 years. But it eventually becomes the point of, okay, how many books then am I planning to get to in 2 years? I can only plan out so many. So I'm at least putting Oathbringer on the list, because that one I should get to. Hopefully also Rhythm of War, but at least this one. Then I'm also hoping to get to Anne of Avonlea by Ellen Montgomery. I read Anne of Green Gables a few years ago. I grew up with an abridged version, finally read the actual version a few years ago, and even bought a box set of the series and still haven't read it. So I at least want to read the second book in the series at some point in the next 2 years. Another one of I would like to read more than that, but I at least need to get the second book read. The next 2 books are part of the same series, but one is a reread and one would be a new read. And that is The Skystone and The Singing Sword by Jack White. This is a Arthurian legend retelling. It's the simplest way to put it. It takes place during the Roman Empire, while Britain was under Roman rule. And I know at some point in the series it's going to lead into Merlin and King Arthur and all of that. We don't get there in the first book, but I know it's going to get there at some point. However, I read The Skystone probably at this point 4 or 5 years ago. And I remember some of the things in it, but I don't remember much. And I have a feeling if I try to continue on with the series, I just won't remember enough to be able to really read it. So I do want to reread this book, and then I want to continue on and read The Singing Sword. The next one is yet again an author that I just want to read at least one book from, and that is Tessa Afshar. I have heard nothing but good things about Tessa Afshar's books, but I have not yet read any of them. So I do have at least 3 or 4 saved in my Hoopla and Libby apps that I could choose from. I know she also just came out with a new book called The Queen's Cook, and there's several other books that I do not have saved, though my apps might have them, that I could potentially pick from. But I just want to get to at least one of her books in the next couple of years. And the next one is also an author that I want to get to, and that is Morgan L. Busse. So I have had Mark of the Raven on my list for years. Still, for some reason, haven't picked up the series. Her steampunk series, which I think begins with Secrets in the Mist, also looks really interesting. I've heard really good things about Winter's Maiden. I just need to finally pick up one of her books. So the next 2 books are by the same author, but they are both standalones, and that is Romanov and Wistress by Nadine Brandes. And at this point, these are the only 2 books by Nadine Brandes that I have not read. So I would like to get them both read in the next couple years and be completely caught up on her books. And apparently I'm going to have a series of these are 2 books by the same author. Or I just need to pick a book by an author. So the next 2 books are both by Kate Morton. And they're the only 2 books by her that I haven't gotten to. The first is The House at Riverton, which was her debut novel, which of all things is one of the 2 that I haven't read. And the other one is Homecoming, which is her most recent novel. I bought this one when it first came out, and for some reason I still haven't gotten to it. I've owned The House at Riverton, for a couple of years now, and still haven't read it. Kate Morton is one of my favorite authors. There is no excuse for why I have not read these, so I want to get them read in the next couple of years. Then I have another author that I just need to read at least one book by her, and that is Sharon K. Penman. So I have the first book in the Justin De Quincey series, which is called The Queen's Man. And all I know about this series is that it's a medieval mystery. Beyond that, I know nothing, but that much intrigued me. The other one is a standalone, and that is When Christ and His Saints Slept. And this one is about, I guess you could say, a civil war that happened after the death of King Henry I of England between Stephen and Henry I's daughter, Maud. Apparently Maud was supposed to assume the throne, but then Stephen took the throne from her, and so there was a whole lot of conflict that ensued from it. That's all I've really gathered from the back. This is a part of English history that I'm not very familiar with, which is part of the reason I picked up the book. But I own 3 of her books, and I have not read any of them. So I need to read at least one of these 2 in the next couple years. Alright, pick up my coffee, because these next few I don't own. So another book that I really want to read is Under the Magnolias by T.I. Lowe. I know it's a Christian fiction. I think it's Christian historical because I believe it takes place in the 80s. I was debating at one point on do I want to keep this book or not, so I read the first chapter of it and I loved it. So I do want to get to the book at some point. I just still haven't picked it up and actually read it. The next one is one that I have had saved on either my Hoopla or Libby app for about 5 years now. And that is Finnegan of the Rock by Melinda Marchetta. I even started this one at one point. Just probably got busy with other books and forgot about it, and then realized if I was going to continue the book, I would need to start over. And then just never picked it up again. So I need to just finally get to this one. All right, next is technically 2 authors, because honestly, I don't really care which one I pick up. I'd like to pick up books by both. But from what I understand, they both write Christian thrillers. And they both seem to be really well liked, so I would like to try at least one of their books. I could make this 41 and list them separately, but I didn't. So the first one is Nancy Mell. And I know I have Mind Games by her saved in one of my library apps. I don't know if I have any more than that, but I know I at least have that one. And then the other author is Carrie Stewart Parks. I think Relative Silence is the one by her that I have saved. Again, for both of these, I've heard a lot of good things about their books. I just need to finally pick them up. And the next one probably comes as no surprise if you saw my November TBR, because I should have gotten to this one and I didn't. And that is the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society. I know the book says by Marianne Schaefer and Anne Barrows. If I understand correctly, one of them started writing the book and then died in the middle of writing, and the other one finished it. That's my understanding. If I'm wrong, you can correct me on that. So I don't know which one was the original author and which one finished the book. But I know it's an epistolary novel, which I tend to really enjoy. If I understand correctly, it takes place after World War II, not during World War II. And it just sounds like a really good book. I've been wanting to get to it the last few falls and just haven't managed to work it in. So it's going on the list. The next one is one that has also been on my shelves for a while and I just keep putting off. And that is The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. Now, I feel like I've heard more good things about her other series that she's read as far as the series as a whole. For the most part, I feel like I've heard this book is really good, but people don't seem to enjoy the other books in the series quite as much, at least on average. But I do at least want to read this one. The next one is not a series or author. This is just a category. And that is, I want to get to at least one book that is a Greek myth retelling. Because I own 3 to start with. I have Ariadne and Electra, both by Jennifer Saint. And yes, these are the UK covers, which I think look so much better than the US ones. And then I also have Clytemnestra by Costanza Casati. And honestly, I mostly picked this one up because the Orestia is a trilogy of Greek tragedies that I had to read in college and I absolutely loved. So I really wanted to read this one. But I'm also interested in these 2. Because if I remember right, yeah, Electra is the sister of Orestes. Am I remembering his name right? It doesn't say on here. And the daughter of Clytemnestra. So these 2 kind of sort of go together. And then Ariadne is the one that helped Theseus get through the labyrinth. I am interested in all 3 of these. However, there are other Greek myth retellings that I'm interested in reading as well. There's Stoneblind by Natalie Haynes. There's Psyche and Eros. Unfortunately, I don't remember the author off the top of my head. There's Ithaca by Claire North. Lots of different Greek myth retellings out there that I'm really interested in reading, and I haven't picked up any of them. So, my hope is to read at least one, hopefully more than one, but at least one in the next couple of years. The next one is The Shadow of What Was Lost by James Islington. And yes, these are bigger books in this series. The Shadow of What Was Lost is the first book. But I have heard really good things about this trilogy, and I would like to give it a try. Alright, then the next one, honestly, I'd like to make a lot more progress in this series than just the one book. But I was getting to the point in the list where I was running out of places to list books because I was getting really close to 40. But that is Shadow Black by Sebastian de Castell, which is the second book in the Spellslinger series. This is another one where I have read the first book twice. I read it years ago, thought it was pretty good, just wasn't able to find the rest of the books in the series, so didn't continue on. Then when I finally found the books, reread the first book, so I would actually remember what was going on. Really enjoyed it that time, and still haven't continued the series. So, I would like to read more than just Shadow Black, but I at least want to get this one read. The next two, again, are part of the same series, but that is The Fire Chronicle and The Black Reckoning by John Stephens. These are books 2 and 3 in the Books of Beginnings series. The first book is The Emerald Atlas, and this is a middle grade, I guess you could call it fantasy series. Through the use of a book, the kids end up going back in time in the first book. So it has a little bit of fantasy feel with the book and a little bit of sci-fi feel with the time travel. But I really enjoyed the first book in the series. I picked this up at random at a thrift store, ended up really liking the first book. But yet for some reason, have not continued the series. So, there's only 3 books, and I would like to get this series finished. Then the last book on the list is also part of a middle grade series, and that is Parvana's Journey by Deborah Ellis. This is a middle grade contemporary series, and if I remember correctly, it takes place in the late 90s in Afghanistan after Afghanistan fell under Taliban control. In the first book, we're following Parvana's younger sister as she tries to figure out how to make a living for the family once their father gets arrested, because the only other male in their house is her 2-year-old brother. And under Taliban rule, women can't be outside the house without a man with them. And so she ends up disguising herself as a boy in order to sell things and earn money for the family so they can still have food. And she does the shopping for them and all of that. But in this book, we're going to be following her older sister, who, if I remember correctly, at the end of the first book, is leaving to get married, if I remember right. It's been a few years since I read the first book, so I'm not 100% certain, but this is another series that I just really need to get back to. Alright, so those are all of the 40 books I want to read by the time I'm 40. It's a lot of books to try to get through. Alright, so that is all I have for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you've read any of the books that I talked about today, you can let me know what you thought about them. And if there are any books in particular on my 40 by 40 list that you think I should prioritize, let me know which ones those are, and I will try to get to them sooner. And other than that, I hope you are having a wonderful day, and I'll see you later.